All right, and on to part 2 of the assignment for this week. So I'm going in present mode just so we can see the slides. All right, so for part 2, what you're basically going to be doing is now we've done a little bit of review. We've gone over some of the key terms that are from units 1 and 2, aka modules 1 through 8. So after going through those different terms, you're going to be putting them into practice by designing a study. This is one of the tasks that the AP test loves to give in the FRQs. And because the FRQ now is the entire test, this is a great practice. So I really want you to take this seriously and actually spend some time digging into these terms and making sure you know how to design an experimental, well, it's not an experimental study, but designing a study. All right. So the first thing you're going to be doing is you're going to be reading an article. And this is basically just to kind of prime you and get you thinking about the topic, which is all going to be about human behavior and the thing that we can't escape, coronavirus. So then you will be designing a study, and there is an assignment that will be posted in Google Classroom. So I'll show you that in a little bit. So moving on to the next slide, you'll see I have a list of a bunch of different articles here. So you are responsible for reading just one. If you would like to read more than one, by all means, go for it. But you are responsible for reading one. You do need to read it. You can't opt out of this because I am going to ask you to identify which one you read and then also give a brief little explanation as to how it inspired your study. So I try to find a variety that are articles that are about coronavirus and how it is somehow related to human behavior. So there's one that's talking about childhood development, which again is a really big topic in psychology, about how isolation is changing how you look. Remember, we spent some time actually talking about social connection and how it's related to our motivations. What coronavirus isolation could do to your mind and body. This is also really connected to motivation, but also to our own kind of self-image and some of the stuff we talked about in personality. Why is it so hard to get work done during challenging times? Again, really plays on motivation, but also has to do a little bit with what's going on in your brain. Why does a crisis make us want to connect and be kinder? Another interesting one that kind of has to deal with our emotions. Being together while staying apart. Again, talking about the need for kind of human contact. This one is a little more relevant to you. I think it's actually about college students, but for the class of 2020, a job-eating virus recalls the Great Recession. Talks about, again, kind of motivation and fear, so also connects to the brain. And then the psychology of coronavirus fear and how to manage it. So again, kind of similar to that. So you're going to pick one of those articles, and these are hyperlinks. So for example, you say, I want to read this one. It'll bring you to the article here. And there you got it. So you're going to read the article first, and then you will come back to the slides, and you'll go on to the next one. So the next part that you're going to do is you will be designing a study. We've done this in class before, actually, and the assignment you're going to be working on is kind of a modified and extended version of what we've already done. So you're going to pretend you're a psychologist, and you're going to be designing a psychological study related to human behavior and coronavirus. So you're going to open up the assignment, which will be assigned in Google Classroom. And then you can also take a look at my example study, which I'll get to in a second, to give you kind of an idea of where this should be going. So as I'm recording this right now, I haven't put this in Google Classroom yet, but it will be in there. So you will open up to this assignment, and first it's going to ask you to write a question. So you're going to be, this is the question that's kind of guiding you. So I'm actually going to hop over to my example. So my question that I was thinking about, and I've been thinking about this a lot, is has coronavirus changed people's ideas and actions related to how they dress and present themselves? So I've been thinking a lot about how, like, already and in the future, how's this going to change what we think about like beauty and clothes? Like, are we going to be even more invested in it because we didn't get to for so long? Or are we going to be like, yo, people saw me behind my computer for months and didn't care that I wasn't wearing makeup, so why would I do it now? So I was inspired by, I've already been thinking about that, but then I read this article, The Isolation is Changing How You Look one. So in the second part, you're going to identify which article you read that kind of inspired this, and then explain a little bit why. So I kind of already explained myself, but I said, this article piqued my interest, especially because this is a question I've been thinking about as I sit around the house wearing sweatpants and no makeup every day. Guilty right now. I'm curious as to how this will change personal and societal ideas about self-presentation, especially when isolation has ended and things are normal again. Will people care less, care more? Then also how do like biological, psychological, and social cultural factors influence this? Meaning like, am I still going to dress the way I do because I have an anxiety disorder? And if I don't, I get anxious about what people are thinking about me. Or am I so invested in what other people think about me just from a social cultural perspective that I have to do it? Or because we live in the United States and that's just what everybody else is doing, is that why I'm doing it? So super interested in that question. So next I'm going to get to the part where I'm actually designing the study. So first thing you always do is you're making a hypothesis. And as you've learned in countless science classes probably before, do it in the if, then, because model. So if coronavirus changes people's beliefs related to self-presentation, then they will begin to care less about societal fashion and beauty norms because they have become accustomed to more simple and natural methods of presentation. That's my hypothesis. You can't steal it. All right. All right. So next I have to say, what kind of study am I going to do? So for mine, I was like, it doesn't really make sense to do an experiment because that's not natural, but it also doesn't make sense to do an observation because then I'm only seeing. I don't actually get to know what people are thinking. So I said I was going to use surveys and interviews to test my hypothesis. And then I explain why. And I'm not going to give you my full explanation. You can read this, but you're also going to be, as you're answering these questions, I've highlighted some of the key terms. Again, these are terms that come up frequently on the FRQs, and it's good to go over them in your text, in the review Quizlets, in your own notes that you've taken throughout the year. Be like, man, okay, so yeah, I know what a survey and interview is, but why is that a good thing to use for this question? Or what are the limitations of that? Next, operational definition. This term always comes up. It comes up so often. So I don't want to say always, but it comes up really often. Operational definition. Again, I'm not going to give you that right now. You should have reviewed it already in our previous video and in the Quizlet activities, but it's also in your textbook. So I picked a term. I didn't actually pick a word. I picked a term. I said care less, because that is super vague and I need to define what caring less looks like. So I said like care less would mean someone who identifies that they dress down or wear less / no makeup at least 50% less than they used to. So I made it really specific. That means this is what I'm looking for. And when other people are doing the same study, they need to say that people did that, therefore they care less. Okay? Next, it goes on to the population. So I said my population will be adults 18 to 50 who currently live in the US. And then I explained why I made it pretty broad and why I chose the United States and why I didn't say like limitations on race or gender, things like that. So I said mostly I'm looking at these ages because that covers 3 generations, Gen X, Millennials, and Gen Z. And these are really the primary consumers and buyers. And I'm talking about makeup and clothing. So that really has to deal with things that you can buy. I limited it to the United States because, well, one, that's where I live, so I'm interested in it. But I'm also interested in seeing how this has affected a highly individualistic and capitalistic society like ours, rather than the one in China that is a little more collective. Again, those are both terms too that have come up in later units. Additionally, I didn't want to set parameters on my population because I'm interested to see how these ideas and actions vary across gender, race, sexuality, socioeconomic status, things like that. So as you can see, I haven't quite finished my assignment yet, but if I were to keep going, you're going to keep designing your study here, and you're going to look at Is it a random sample? What kind of sampling bias might there be? And then also confounding variables. Again, as I've said, if you don't remember those terms, look back into your notes or the text to help you out with them. I'm going to stop this video there because then in the next video, I'm going to go into analyzing the study.